Refugee camps are designed to provide temporary safe haven for displaced persons in emergency situations. But in some cases, such as Lebanon, Georgia, Thailand, and Kenya, days and months become years and even generations. Ben Rawlence is the author of a new book. It's called City of Thorns, 9 Lives in the World's Largest Refugee Camp. And he joins us now to consider the problem of permanent refugees. Nice to have you here at TVO.
Thank you.
Let me start with an excerpt from your book. In a culture centered on leaving, to remain in Dadaab, big camp in Kenya, is seen as a kind of failure. Real men are those who go to the USA, said one young boy. The young people in the camps grow up discussing the relative merits of the few countries that accept Somali refugees, the USA, UK, Canada, Australia, Netherlands, Sweden, and Norway, as if they too will soon be going there, as if they know all about it. Let's try to compare what their hopes and dreams are with reality. How many of those children are actually going to leave the refugee camps and go to the New World?
Very few indeed, I'm afraid. The UN quota system takes around 1,000 to 2,000 refugees every year from Dadaab, but the birth rate in the camp is 1,000 a month. So there's no way that those numbers are ever going to match up. So kids, these dreams, unfortunately, are going to be broken.
And they don't move as quickly as they'd like to, because why?
Well, the system is supposed to, you go to a refugee camp because either after a period of time, hopefully you're going to go home to your home country, or you get accepted into the new country, or you get resettled abroad. But that resettlement option is pretty much broken these days because the numbers being taken are so few.
That's what I'm wondering, though. Is it because we don't want them?
Yes, in short, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So if we had a better attitude, shouldn't say better attitude, if we had a different attitude about the advisability of taking refugees, there'd be more progress on this?
Well, once upon a time, rich countries did take much larger numbers, but slowly, in the last 2 decades, those numbers have gone down and down and down, and therefore the numbers of people stuck in these temporary camps has gone up and up and up, and that's why we now have this crunch point, and the Syrians are deciding not to go to camps. They're going instead to Europe.
You've been to, as we look at some pictures of Dadaab, this is the biggest refugee camp in the world, set up for 90,000 people. 500,000 people live there now. Tell us what it is like for, let's just say, a young teenage boy to be living in a place like this. What does it do to them?
Well, the way I'd like to think about it is it's like a pressure cooker. It's like the sky is pressing down, and therefore it makes all of your decisions very contingent. So one day you can wake up saying, yes, I'm going to go to the United States or Canada, or that dream is alive, and then the following day you might find the young guy in the pits of depression. Like, for example, the young man called Tawane, who I cover in the book. Every day you talk to him, he's got some sort of different scenario about what's going to happen in the future. The likelihood is actually none of them are going to be true, and he's going to be stuck in the camp, but he has to try and hope.
What is the impact of Facebook in places like Dadaab?
Facebook's very powerful. So, for example, Tawane, he's got friends in Minnesota, in Toronto, in London, who were once upon a time in the camp. And he sees pictures of their lives, and he sees what's going on, and he feels very jealous, and it hurts him. In fact, Facebook is almost like it's like a sharp instrument, really.
So he does not see that as, here's my future, this is the hope I'm holding out for?
Well, as I said, on some days he can convince himself that that's a possibility, but on other days he's seized by despair.
There's a Canadian angle in your book as well. This is the World University Service of Canada, which has been around for a long time, although I think a lot of people have not heard about it. What is that?
Yeah, if you say the acronym WUSC to people in the camp, everybody knows what that means, because the WUSC program takes the 10 best boys and the 10 top girls from secondary school, and it offers them scholarships to Canadian universities. So there's a young woman in the camp called Cairo who obtains a place at secondary school, which is a big deal because there's very few places at secondary school, so her family throws her a party. And she spends the next 5-6 years at secondary school dreaming of Canada. All of the students are looking at the universities, deciding where they're going to go, hoping that they're going to be one of the ones to go to Canada. Unfortunately, she herself doesn't make the cut, but the impact of that opportunity shapes the dreams of a whole generation in the camp.
But they go to Canada, but then do they have to go back to Dadaab after it's over?
I don't think so. I think if you're granted a resettlement here, that's not a requirement, but many do, and there is definitely a culture of giving back as part of the WUSC program.
Ben, in our last minute and change here, could you give us, based on your experience of having seen this firsthand, some advice as to what countries, such as Canada, can do to help unstuck those people who are stuck in refugee camps, some of them for 2 decades?
I think the main thing that rich countries need to do is to unblock this pipeline, is to make the refugee system work that is already established, which the UNHCR was set up to manage. Could work very well. At the moment, it's not, and that's why we have this problem.
How do we get that to do it? I mean, anybody watching this program right now says, what can I do? What you're talking about is what governments can do. What can they do?
Well, Canada is one of the few countries that allows private sponsorship of refugees. So if book groups reading this take a fancy to one of those characters, maybe they can sponsor that person to come, or they can sponsor other people. But there is at least that private channel in Canada, which many other countries don't have.
And we are certainly reading stories in the newspapers every day of people who are doing just that. But we need more, I guess, eh?
Yes, more.
Gotcha. Ben Rawlence, City of Thorns, 9 lives in the world's largest refugee camp. We should also remind people that we will have you again in the days ahead for a much longer interview about the book itself, which is a fascinating look at, would you call it one of the most godforsaken places in the world? On some days it is, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah. Ben Rawlence, thanks so much.
Thank you.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit supporttvo.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.